Hello and welcome to this week's episode of History Behind the Page, the live series where you get to know more about the people behind your favorite history pages and all things history. I am super excited for tonight. We have Jenn from Walk with History on tonight. She runs an amazing YouTube traveling channel. She is also a veteran pilot. She is just a lover of history and all this other stuff. So I'm super excited to have her on tonight. This is a live Q&A, so you are more than welcome to ask questions. I do ask, though, that on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, there is a little question mark bubble. Go ahead and submit your questions there, as sometimes they get lost in the comments, and we want to make sure if you have a question that we can definitely answer it for you. So, happy to be back. Took a little hiatus on History Behind the Page, but we're back in full swing. So I'm excited to have Jenn kick off my welcome back episode, I guess. I don't know. So we'll get Jenn on here in just a second, and then we'll get this show on the road. So let me go ahead and invite her. Hey!
Hi!
How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad to see you.
I'm glad to see you too. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. I had to take a little break, so thanks for being so understanding with rescheduling. So I really appreciate that. So
absolutely, always flexible. Semper Gumby, right?
Yeah. So how's your Friday going?
It's good. It's busy. I have 3 kids, so we just got done with practices and dinner and bedtime. So
all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's kick off this Friday night with some history chit chatting. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great. I'm so excited.
Right. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about how? Because I know you probably have a big story, especially being, serving in the Navy and all this other stuff. How did you get into history? What started it?
I was waiting for this question because I really thought about where did it start? I honestly can say it probably started with Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Watching Indiana Jones as a kid and how he knows where to put the pole and for the light to go through at just the right moment. And I love when he had the book and he was able to figure out all the steps because he had done all this, his dad had done all this research. So I just really appreciate people who have spent the time to gather that knowledge, to be able to pull out this is what really happened and this is what they were thinking and this is what they said. But I didn't major in that in school. So as a young kid, my parents are Air Force, and they would take me to air shows as a kid. And I saw the Thunderbirds, and I'm like, that's going to be me. I'm going to fly the Thunderbirds, right? So when I was when I graduated high school and going into college, I went for the Air Force scholarship, and the Air Force said, you have to major in math or you won't get a scholarship. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to major in, right? I'm 17. I graduated early. I'm like, I don't know. So the one floor up was the Navy. I never even thought of the Navy. I walked one floor up the building and I said, hey, how do you guys give scholarships? We give ROTC scholarships, full rides. You can major in anything you want. I said, sign me up. Well, I'll go Navy, right? And so I knew nothing about the Navy, loved it though. And I was going to fly jets, right? Jets, F-14. I think I post a picture of me flying in an F-14. And 2 days after I flew in that F-14, I was flying in the helicopter off of a aircraft carrier. And I was sitting in the back seat because I was not a trained pilot yet. And 2 F-14s had hit each other. They were dogfighting and they hit each other. And one of them went into the water right in the Mediterranean there. The other one made it back to the ship. And we went out to rescue the 2 people in the F-14, and the pilot had died, just like Goose in Top Gun. He had hit his head, got knocked out, and drowned. But the NFO survived, so Goose had survived, and broke his leg 90 degrees the opposite direction. And we got him in the helicopter, and he's screaming and stuff, and they're splinting his leg. And I'm just not even a pilot. I'm sitting in the back of this helo watching the rescue guys. And we get back to the carrier, and then they're going to take him to Turkey to save his leg. And I helped carry the stretcher. And he says to me, when I heard the rotors coming, I knew I was going to be okay. And that's when I decided to be a helicopter pilot. I like changed then. So it was amazing because I went through flight school and I got my wings 3 days after 9/11. And I went straight out to helicopter training. And the helicopters did all the heavy lift in Iraqi freedom, enduring freedom. Like the jet guys come in and bomb.
Yeah.
But we're in the thick of everything. We're getting people in and out. We're giving like friendly, air cover. We're doing medevacs. Like everything changes so fast. So it was a real exciting time to be a pilot. And I was young and I was dumb and I was like, so I still not on my radar, right? So I get out of the Navy, and that's when you have a GI Bill, and you can use it. Like, so I got out before I got married, before I had children, so I couldn't give mine away, and so you use it or lose it. And I decided, well, let's use it. I'm going to go back to school and get a master's degree in American history. And I tell people, it's a degree you can kind of like wipe your butt with because everybody, no one cares. Right? It's like, but I have the GI Bill. I might as well use it, and I'm so glad I did because it gave me, Sarah, to be honest with you, it gave me confidence when I speak about things, right? Because I have done some research. I've been in the archives. I've been able to write a thesis, pull out information, see trends, and say, this is what I think is happening at this time. I'm seeing these trends through the primary source. I mean, what is a primary source? What is a secondary source? All those things I learned, and I learned how to do that. And, people are very sometimes unconfident in maybe what they see or what they recognize in history. It gave me that. And for that, I'm thankful for.
It gave you more of like an understanding and more of an open mind, I guess, to it. To a lot of people don't have the open mindedness of history and just want to see what's right in front of them and not the whole story. So
and how much it really plays into so much, right? Like how it touches so many things. So
and history is complicated. It's not just like some things are kind of, black and white, but a lot of it is there's so much more to it than just, Germany invades Poland. There's so much more to that. There's so much that led up to it. There's so much, after, so much. It's not just one tiny little thing. So that's the very interesting thing about history. I feel like, at least. So.
Well, and it's like I learned so much about like who wrote history, and sometimes women didn't even start writing about themselves, until like late 1700s. So what about all the women before that? You kind of have to pull them out of writing from men, and then so it's like, where's the representation of people and how do they feel about things? And so you're kind of inferring it from other people's. I mean, I had to learn all that, right?
Yeah.
I really appreciate there's been some great historians who have gone into the archives and they write about people who haven't written about themselves. So like enslaved people or like oppressed women, and they pull out their stories through like, like a runaway ad, like a runaway slave ad, and like maybe the scars they had on them or something like that. Those tell their story, who they were. So it's so neat how historians try to do that for people, to give them a voice, and I really appreciate that stuff.
So you went to school, you got your master's in American history. So when you went to school, what was your plan? You're like, I'm going to get my master's in American history and I want to be I'm a pilot, I'm a vet. Like what was going through your head when you decided American history?
So funny. So I got my bachelor's in 99. I got my master's in 2019. So 20 years later. So it was hilarious because I printed out my papers on dot matrix printers when I was an undergrad. I had to go back and get a master's and like, what's Dropbox? What is this? Things have to be submitted, and you don't print out a paper. Nobody prints out a paper. You have to submit
I still wish they did though, because
I was like, I felt like the oldest person in class all the time. I was like, what is happening right now? Like, but I really didn't have a plan. That's pretty funny. I didn't have any plan. Like, I just went back and I thought, well, it'll speak to me. It'll present itself. And that's exactly what happened. I went to the University of Memphis. It's a predominantly African-American school. There was a couple classes. I was the only white person in class. And I really got pulled into racial justice and racial research. And I'm a Yankee, right? And I mean, I'm born in the South. I'm born in Fayetteville, North Carolina. My parents were stationed at Fort Bragg when I was born. But I'm a Yankee. My dad's from Pittsburgh. My mom's from New York. I went to Penn State for undergrad. So to get a master's of American history in the South and to do racial research, I was just immersed in history and things I had never heard or done or learned about. I got myself in some funny situations. I actually uncovered the first documented lynching that happened in Memphis, and I had a historic marker written. I wrote it. I got it approved by the National Park Service. I got it. I got it installed in downtown Memphis where the lynching took place. And so that's what I did with most of my master's research. But again, it was amazing, Sarah. So
that is
immersing
amazing.
myself.
I have goosebumps. That is a good, Jen. That is awesome. That is seriously so amazing. So thank you for doing that. That is
and I fell into it, Sarah, right? I didn't have a plan. That wasn't a big plan, but I was just so like uneducated about all of, race. Like, I mean, I had education about race, but not to that degree, right? And it was really an education. And then for me, wanting to uncover things and learn things and ask questions. So as a historian, I really make a point. I'm not here to judge anybody.
No.
I'm here to tell the past. And so I would get into conversations with people and people who held some keys, some information that I needed. But I think people have to feel unthreatened and comfortable. And I really make a point because I just want to know the truth. And I have no agenda other than that.
You just want to know the facts. You want to know what happened. All history people are very curious people. So
exactly. So most of the time I needed an education about a ton of stuff, like even like the Civil War, right? Like, so I'm getting down into Memphis. One of my very first videos to Walk with History, if you ever watch, is about Nathan Bedford Forrest. Because I'm like, who the heck is Nathan? I don't know who he was, right? We moved to Memphis. There's a big statue of him in the middle of the city. And I'm like, I don't know who he is. So I do a video on him. But people there know that information. But when you're educated in the North, it's like Grant and Lee, and that's about it. Maybe a little Sherman. Maybe, and that's about it.
And the Civil War is also super complicated too. It's not as, cut dry as most people, as what you learn in school. Because I think most kids learn about the Civil War. I know I learned about it in middle school. So I think that's the grade that you learn about it. And that's actually what got me into history is learning about the Civil War in middle school. But yeah, as an adult, going back and looking back at it, I was like, wow, there's so much more. And going on those rabbit holes, you're like, there's way much more than than just what the basic education of,
and so much like system. People's memory and perception and what they were taught and what they were told, and I just wanted to hear all of it, right? It's all relevant. And so I basically just fell into all. I'm one of those fly by the seat of your pants historians, as you probably noticed from my channel.
I love it. That's the best kind. We need a balance of both. So it's perfect. So get your master's. When did Walk with History become an idea in your head?
So I started it as a Facebook page for my family when we moved to Memphis to just educate my Yankee family about the South. And I was going to like Graceland and telling everyone about Elvis. Because moving to Memphis, I knew a little bit about Elvis, but immersion in Elvis history, right? And then Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis. So immersion and all of that. And then I took a break from it. We had moved to Erie, Pennsylvania. Scott was the commanding officer of the Naval Support Center in Erie, and COVID happened.
Oh, good old COVID.
Right? COVID. So I'm like, so I'm trying to work out and stay in shape on my treadmill, and I'm on YouTube, and I'm thinking, I want to see some grave sites. I want to see some museums. And I start looking up some things, and I would distinctly remember trying to look up Maureen O'Hara's grave. She was an actress with John Wayne.
Love her.
Yeah, I love her. And nobody went to her grave. And I was like, because I don't think a lot of people know she's in Arlington.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I walked out of my office and I said, Scott, what if I start a YouTube channel? And my husband, had been dabbling on YouTube for like 3 years. He had made like a family channel, and he got all the software to do the editing. And he said, I've been waiting for this my whole life. Like,
he was so excited.
So excited. Because he had been listening to all these podcasts, and evergreen content is what you're looking for, right? Because history is evergreen content, right? It's not going to change unless someone discovers something. And so one of our first videos was Arlington, and I go to Maureen O'Hara's grave, and I tell you all about Maureen O'Hara and why she's in Arlington. And it was at that time that I was also looking at other history channels, and that's when I found JD from History Underground, and he had just done Arlington too.
Oh, that's funny.
So I said, hey, you're doing Arlington. I did Arlington. And he goes, I just watched your video. And he said to me, I should have done all those graves you did. You did so many better graves than me. And I was like, well, anytime you want to. So we've been corresponding for a while. I think he wasn't even to 100,000 at that point. So we had been talking back and forth. But that's kind of what spawned it. And so if you go to my channel, you'll see all different types of things. I try to history that just interests me, things you'll want to see, even filming locations. I do some stuff with Glory. I know that's a movie you like.
I do. Yeah.
Barney, the guy who represents Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman in that movie, the one man who's kind of both of them, is from Norfolk, Virginia.
Oh.
So I do his story. He won the medal. He was awarded the Medal of Honor for what he did. He doesn't get killed, but he doesn't let the colors fall. So he holds the flag the whole time, and that's what he's awarded the Medal of Honor for. And so, so I try to do those kind of stories, things that I'm like, oh yeah. So, but again, I don't really stick to one thing. I'm all over the place.
I totally understand that. Find something that interests you and you're like, I want to share this with people. I want to tell people about this. And because probably people don't know about it. And, because people just hear about, I guess I'm totally spacing the word, but, the more popular stuff that we all learn in school, or they make movies about, or all that stuff. And there's so much more than just that. So I absolutely love it. And then when you post something that you find super interesting, you become super passionate about it, and it just becomes like the content becomes so much better, and you're like, wow, like just amazing. And so I love the channel. I think it's great, and it's interesting. It's a lot of people who have started their YouTube channels during COVID. Because a lot of people lost their jobs. I lost my job due to COVID for reduction in force, so they didn't need me anymore. So it gave people a lot of time to actually think what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to, I have all this time, and really think about it. And
you could be outside too, right?
Yeah.
Like you didn't have to go inside somewhere. You could be out in a location and talk about it, and that made it convenient too, I think.
Yeah. So how do you, I know you said you're kind of all over the place, but how do you find, how do you plan when you're going to go do something? Like, how do you have some sort of plan, or I know you said you're a fly by the seat of your pants type person.
I do it. We try to be consistent with videos every Wednesdays for Walking Wednesday. So we kind of have to have a plan, right? mostly it's, you know, stuff that I'm interested in wanting to do. Like, so when I went to London for 2 weeks, right, I was like, I want to do Jane Austen, I love her. I want to do Charles Dickens, I love him. I want to do Band of Brothers, I love them. I want to do Downton Abbey, I want to do Call. So those were the things that I'm interested in. I know some other people must be too, but I would want to see that, right?
Yeah.
Going there, I would want to go. Like, I wanted to see Downton Abbey. So might as well make a video because I want to see it. And, you know, Arlington was like, I wanted to see Maureen O'Hara's grave. No one's done it, so let me show you. Let me show you Lee Marvin, who's there.
Lee Marvin.
Yeah, I know. I talk all about the man who shot Liberty Valance.
I love that movie so much.
So much. We show it. Like, I love it. And I talk about John Wayne, and I think JD and I talked about this movie. I was like, because this movie to me is the perfect marriage of where you need brawn and brains. You can't be one. Sometimes you need both, you know.
Such a good movie.
Such a good movie.
Such a good movie.
And Lee Marvin holds his own against John Wayne, which is hard, right?
Yeah.
To do.
I know.
So yeah, so again, I'm just so excited to be there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm here. And so I think it was those things. Like, I went to Jimmy Stewart's house and I stand on his porch. And I'm like, freak out. And I'm like, I'm on Jimmy Stewart's porch. Like, and I think someone was like, you're making me fangirl for you because you're so excited to be there. So it's, I don't know, it's things that I want to do, and I'm going to take you along on the ride.
I love that.
But I do so one of the things with my master's in studying race, I got immersed into the Mississippi Delta. And I ended up doing some research deep in the heart of the Delta. And I ended up in the same town where Emmett Till's body was pulled out of the water. So I do a 3-part series on Emmett Till because I learned everything about it. I learned all the locations. I learned the whole story. And on YouTube, there are a couple people who do some of it, but I do all of it.
All of it, yeah.
And I get a pushback sometimes being white, you know, people are like, why are you talking about this? And I feel like, you know, it's important that it's the business of all of us.
Yeah.
You know, and you're going to get people who criticize you and for all the ridiculous stuff, but I feel like it's important, and you can criticize me, but I'm still going to tell you the history. And so that series I'm really proud of because I got, someone connected to the case reached out to me and was like, you're one of the first people to tell the honest truth about this. And I was like, because as a historian, I made sure that everything I talk about is primary sourced and information, not from magazines or TV or something. It's something that I could find in a primary source. So, but that's another, and I go to all those locations, and that's interesting to be deep in the South. Going to all the places, you know.
They're coming out with a movie here shortly on Emmett Till. So I'm interested to see if it Hollywoodizes it or actually sticks to the facts. And the thing with Hollywood doing, you know, true story stuff, they have to do some things to keep the audience engaged. You know, it's not a documentary, but I really hope they do the whole story justice and really share what happened, you know, and
absolutely
and everything. So yeah, because I only know I know the basic story of it. I don't know the full details. I just know that it was a very tragic story about him he was so young, and
I didn't know anything. I remember I was driving to this lady's house to interview her. And as I'm pulling into her road, and she's an old white lady, there's a historic marker in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's where Emmett Till's body was pulled out of the water. So then I'm like, where the heck am I? Like, you know, here I am, Yankee, in my minivan. And, you know, whew, but I went down there like 10 times. And I mean, I learned a lot. And again, she was very... this is a great story, and she vetted me before she would talk to me. She wanted to know what my political affiliation was, and she wanted to know where I was born. And when I told her, she's like, okay, you can look at my information.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. So
That
you're
is
gonna,
very interesting.
yeah. So as even as a historian, some things are closed off. You have to be very, like, again, un, just unconfrontational. You're
Mm-hmm.
here to tell the truth, and so
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
You have to be unbiased and you can't
Hmm.
have some sort of other agenda with it. That's not what
Hmm.
history is about, which is
Yeah.
currently confused. People are confused on that, but it's can't win them all. Sorry, I said it, and people get pissed about that. It's true. So
I know. So true. And it's like you can see you coming a mile away. I always tell
hmm
people, you can see your agenda coming a mile away. If I can see your agenda coming, you shouldn't be talking about history.
yeah, just yeah, because the one of the biggest things that I always say, and my friends roll my eyes so many times at this, is that people confuse facts and feelings versus facts.
Hmm.
You can have a feeling about a fact, but that feeling is not a fact.
Exactly.
And that's where people get a lot of the horse blinders and a little bit
Hmm.
confused on history, because history is uncomfortable. It is.
Hmm.
It's not
Hmm.
pretty. It's not glamorous. It's not anything. It's sad and
Yeah.
yeah. So that's just like a big thing with me, my whole fact versus feeling thing. I swear, if one of my friends are watching this, they're like, here she goes again saying the fact versus feeling thing.
No, I'm with you. I have a hard time with the vernacular, the right side of history. I'm like, what
Mm-hmm.
side? The right
Yeah,
side? I said the right side is the truth. That's
yeah,
the right side.
yeah. There's
The wrong side is the not telling the truth. I don't know what the
yeah.
right side of history is. It's
Don't know
the
either.
truth.
People are silly sometimes. So do you have, I know that you kind of do like broad,
Mhm.
so much different American history, but do you have like a certain um era or like specialty that just draws you more like towards something like you're like, I love everything, but I really love the Civil War, or I really love World War II, or something like that.
I do love military history. I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
a vet, right? And
Yeah.
honestly, like military history, I had to learn it. So my undergrad, my minor was in military history. That's what got me into grad school. But you had to learn that to be a midshipman. You have to learn all these naval battles. You have to learn, even Marine Corps. You're having to learn the battles of World War II because you're learning the strategic
Mm-hmm.
operations and what officers have done before you, because you're going to be an officer, you're going to be leading people, and kind of tactics and things along that nature. So I'm always interested in that. I love um, underdog stories,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I love women representation. I love race represent. I love like Tuskegee Airmen.
Mm-hmm.
I love WASP and WACs, and but I also love Band of Brothers. I love white dudes too, right? Because I love them all, right? Um,
Yeah.
so
So
so but I don't know. I think I'm really pulled to a passionate story.
yeah.
And it can be the war, but it can also be just like Western, or
Mm-hmm.
it can just be something with like a union, or workers fighting. Like I just really love people who are history makers,
Mm-hmm.
and that are so, they take their agency upon themselves to change their lives. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm so inspired by that, and I'm so passionate about that, and I want to tell that story, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, I love Rocky, right? I love the movie. Like I love those stories, and when they're
Mm-hmm.
real, when there's
Yeah.
really people who did that, I think that they're so much more powerful. And so I love those stories. So
Mm-hmm.
I love Civil War. Like I want to know it all, right?
Yeah, I know. I love it. I love your passion. I love just I love just everything. This is so fantastic. You don't meet historians like you, Jen. There's usually one, direction, and I love that you're so broad and that you want to share so much of everything, not just
Mhm.
one specific thing. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm like jack of all trades, master of none when it comes to
You
history.
are, though. I love it.
That's why
Love
I
it.
couldn't, like, usually when you go for your master's, you kind of write a thesis, right? You're
Yeah.
going to like find your pigeonhole. And most people, like, you got to be very pigeonholed. It's like white women in the 1950s in Memphis, Tennessee, who were doing the shopping, their influence on commerce, like it has to be very direct and pigeonholed. And I just couldn't, nothing, I wasn't passionate about any one thing. And that's why I did the marker, right? Is because I wanted to know all of it. I want to understand all of it. I want to be able to speak to all of it. I want to be able to hear about all of it. I want to be able to be in those conversations with people. So it doesn't really leave me as an expert on one thing, which I'm fine with, but I just like kind of immersing myself all over the place.
I think it's fantastic. So you go to school, you have, for history. So obviously you went to school, you learned a bunch of history. How do you pick your topics for Walk with History? Are they stuff that you have already learned? Are they new stuff that you've discovered, or is it a mixture of both? Or how do you decide on what you're just gonna?
It's a mixture of both. I would say, it's really something that for me, it's something I would want to look up myself. So if I am learning about something, or I see something, or I read something, and I'm like, I want to look that up on YouTube, or I want to know more about that, then I'm thinking I should make a video about this. If I'm interested in this and knowing more about this, I should probably make a video about this, because there's probably people who are also more interested in this. Like I do kind of obscure stuff. I did Gila Lax. So Henrietta Lacks, she's the African-American woman who we get the Gila cell line from, which the Gila cell line is responsible for all of us today living the lives we live, because her cell line developed the polio vaccine, it developed the COVID vaccine, it developed the AIDS vaccine, AIDS research, cancer research. Her cell line doesn't die. And so they can multiply it, send it out to all these pharmaceutical companies to do their research on. And her cell line is responsible for making all of these breakthroughs in medicine. Well, she's from Virginia, and she's buried here in Virginia in some like small town 3 hours away. And I told Scott, we're going to go. And we drove out there, and we had to ask people in the town like how to find her grave. And I did her story because I just feel like it's important. And there was I learned about her through an HBO series, the Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. And so I watched that, and I'm like, I want to know more about this woman. This is amazing. And so finding that, then I made the video. I think I'm the only person who's even done her grave on YouTube. And a couple people told her story, but I'm standing where she grew up. I'm standing where she is now, where she's buried now. But I just feel like those stories need to be told. So again, if I see something and I'm like, I want to, like a
I need to know more.
I need to know more, right? I want to show this. The Arlington was a big, that was like the first big video to take off. And then I did a second video from Arlington, and I did like Gunnery Sergeant Ermey. And I did all these media influencers who are buried in Arlington. So people you wouldn't even realize, and famous actresses from the 30s and stuff. And that one is my biggest video so far. So what we try to do is we try to go there. I tell you about their lives, but then we cut in clips of their movies, or cut in clips of them. So it's kind of like you can learn and be there at the same time. So those are the kind of things I like to do. I want to educate you and show you, and you talk. I like to give you where I'm at too. So if you want to go, this is the location, and this is like how you get there. And so if people want to, I do the night like Lincoln was assassinated. I walk all through DC, because they tried to kill the vice president and the secretary of state, all of the same. So, but if you wanted to walk all of that, I try to give you like the addresses while I'm there and stuff. So those kind of things that I would want to do,
What have you? Go ahead. Sorry.
I said things you'd want to do if you were a history nerd.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's great. give us a roadmap. I love it. What do you find? Oh my gosh, what was the question I was just going to ask? Oh, what was the most challenging episode that you had to do?
Oh, the most challenging episode. I'm trying to think. I have really only been, I wouldn't really say, There were some. So I did the Cleveland Torso Killer. So I don't do a lot of true crime, right? Because the whole true crime.
It's huge.
It's huge, right? People do their makeup and do true crime, and people, you know. So I don't like, and honestly, I can get a little grossed out after. I'm like, you know, even though, believe me, I'll read all about the serial. I've read them all. I know, you know, my parents were both cops. Believe me, I'd be like, okay, I'm immersed in Ted Bundy. Yes, I know. About the cast, Mom. Yes, Silence of the Lambs. Yes, I know. I will never help a guy with a cast. But so Cleveland Torso Killer was Elliot Ness was brought in to catch him. And I do his story because he was never caught. And he operated, his victims were out of a Hooverville, so out of a shanty town from the Depression. So I give you kind of history. What is a Hooverville? Why is it called after, you know, Herbert Hoover, the president? Why they call him that? And this one was based right beside like a train depot. And so I give you the whole life of people who would jump on and off trains in the 1930s, the tramp lifestyle, which was very common then. Yeah. And so the Cleveland Torso Killer has 13 victims. They've only ever identified 2, and then they never caught the person. And I talk about why, you know, because people wouldn't identify these other 11 victims. And why? Because people didn't want to tell people they were associated with these kind of people. Right? These are like the derelicts of society. You're on the outskirts of town in a shanty town. They're the alcoholics. They're your addicts. They're your alternative lifestyles. And people don't want to admit that they know them. Plus, in the 30s, the police are corrupt. And so you don't even want to really talk to them. So they never identify these victims, never identify the killer. Elliot Ness is brought in to catch him. And Elliot Ness believes he's caught him, but the guy doesn't confess. He lets him go. Then the last 2 victims are found in like the eye view of Elliot Ness's office. Oh. And it's crazy because it's like present day, where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is. Like it's like a really like
you're like, no, that's weird.
So here I am, like filming right by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right by the Cleveland Brown Stadium, where tons of people are like walking around, and I'm like, and the last 2 decapitated bodies were found right here, and people are looking at me, and I'm like, oh my god. But so a lot of those, so I go to where the victims were found in that video, and they're not in the best parts of town. Yeah. So Scott, I would be like, Scott, I'm going to jump out. I'm going to film, turn the car around, have the car going. If somebody comes up to me, I'm jumping in the car. So just be ready, right? So I would jump out. I would film real fast. This is where these people were, and I would jump in the car. So I would say that was probably the hardest. Plus, we go to like a ton of locations. If you watch that video, that was an early, like, I'd say we had a lot of ambition. I'm taking you where all the 11 victims were found. I'm going to show you the grave sites of where the 2 victims were. I'm going to take you to Elliot Ness's grave. I'm like, really? Do people need to see all of that? But here I am. I mean, I go to the shanty town today. I talk about shanty town. So that was a very ambitious video. It was in we weren't in the best parts of town in some of those. And you know, again, true crime is hit and miss, right? And talking about like a torso killer, like you can imagine, like they didn't find a lot of heads.
a lot of moving parts, probably not. No.
Yeah. So it's like not a pretty story to tell. Yeah. So that was probably one of the hardest ones to do. We're gonna do Jack the Ripper here soon. So in London, I went to all of those locations. So I warned Scott, I'm like, be ready, because those pictures are graphic too.
Yeah. So my mom loves that era, and she loves she loves that era. She doesn't love the story of Jack the Ripper, but she thinks it's very intriguing. And during COVID, because there was, you know, nothing really to do, she would watch Jack the Ripper tours on YouTube, and and she found it so fascinating. So I'm super excited for you to do that. That's gonna be super fun, because it's because I think a lot of the places, like, just like you were saying, like the torso killer was, you know, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's right there. It's the same thing with Jack the Ripper. Like, it's not like,
it's a nice part. It's East London now.
Yeah, there's like a, you know, a building right there.
Obviously. It's very trendy now. East London. Like I went in, I love to do my filming in the morning because not a lot of people are out.
Yeah.
And so I went to 5 locations. Like they call them the Kennel 5. So the 5 that they are absolutely sure were Jack the Ripper, right?
Yeah.
Like there's 2 before and 2 after they think could be him, but there's 5 for sure that are Jack the Ripper. So I do their locations, and no one's really out that early in the morning. I can stand there, I can film, I can talk about finding a woman with her torso ripped open, you know, and people aren't like,
I'm being like, I'm trying to enjoy my coffee, please stop.
and one is like in a schoolyard now, like it's an elementary schoolyard. I'm like, these poor kids. I hope people like.
That's a little morbid. I know. I wonder if people come up to school and be like, "Hey, do you know where you're standing?" Back in the 1800s, you know.
Somebody was found dead there.
Yeah. Ooh. Traumatized kids. What has been your most meaningful episode?
Oh, meaningful. You know, those Emmett Till videos, when I had that family member read. So what happened was I do a 3-part series on Emmett Till, and I do 3 parts because I do the lead up all the way up to Brian Grocery. Then I do the aftermath Brian Grocery until his body is discovered. And then I do the trial. So it's kind of like and in the trial part, when Emmett's body was embalmed, it was done in a town that's a little bit north of where the trial took place. And the person who testifies to embalming Emmett Till is a white man who owns the crematorium. But he's not the person who embalmed him. Because if you think 1950s Mississippi, a white man is not going to embalm a black man. Right? So he has a black man that works for him. And that black man is actually the person who embalmed him. He's the one who actually handled Emmett Till's body, saw all of the trauma, and he's the one who, you know, sealed up the coffin and sent it up. But it's the white man who testifies. And it's the white man who testifies that it wasn't a boy, it was a man. He had been in the water for longer than 3 days. And so he's lying. The whole time he's lying on the stand because he didn't even see him. And that, for 30 years, it didn't really come out that he wasn't the one who embalmed Emmett Till. And so when I tell that story, I give it, I think the last name was Jackson, of the man who actually embalmed Emmett Till. I talk about him and who really did it. And it was their family who contacted me.
Oh, wow.
And was like, thank you for telling the truth. Because there was a miniseries that came out, Women in the Movement. And this did the whole story of Mamie Till and the Emmett Till story. And they even show a white man embalming Emmett Till. And so the family members even said, like, they don't even show the right thing in this miniseries that just came out.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how those little things, you know, can skew a whole story if you don't get them right.
Yeah, and it can change the story. So, and then you wonder why people are walking around saying the wrong information.
Exactly. And I got a lot of that, right? Because, so you probably know there's a lot of Carolyn Bryant lying, right? She perjured herself. And so the issue is, a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, she lied about everything. Well, the one thing that she didn't lie about was the whistle. And I get a lot of people who get mad at me about that. But the whistle happened outside of the grocery. And a bunch of people heard the whistle. And so that can't really be, she didn't lie about it, right? Because he walks out of the grocery store and Emmett Till whistles at her. Now, we don't know why he whistled at her. He could have been whistling. They said they were playing checkers. He could have been whistling at a move on the checkers board. We don't know his intent. We can't ask him. And so, but the whistle happened. And the whistle, you know it happened because his cousins get very scared in that moment. And they get scared, they jump in the car and drive away because they know a social norm has been broken, right? And that's the catalyst for everything to kind of happen. But what she lies about is, in the trial, once the jury leaves, she says this whole story that Emmett like grabbed her in the grocery store when no one was around. He put his hand on her waist. He said some, you know, obscene things to her. That's what she lied about. And that's what people want to like bring her back to trial. And I get it, right? I think justice doesn't die. It has no time, you know, it doesn't go, you know, it doesn't expire. But it's not the whistle. And so I get a lot of people who want to argue about that. you
Mm-hmm.
know, and again, history, right? I have to be honest. I have to be truthful. This is what happened. And again, there's so many people who have testified to that whistle that it's not
Mm-hmm.
just something that happened between Bryant and Till. Um, so that's meaningful to me, right?
Yeah.
And even if I do get called names or people say stuff, I want to like stand the historic ground, like, you know, stand on the truth. And even if
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to hear, like you said, history sucks sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's hard to immerse yourself in some terrible things and hear
Mm-hmm.
things, and you know, you can kind of lose your hope sometimes, but it needs to be told.
It does. Yeah. And when people, people do get offended when you tell them the facts and it challenges what they've always believed.
Hmm.
That's, I think, what the most challenging thing with sharing history
Hmm.
is that you're challenging what somebody has been told or believed their whole life. And then they're
Yeah.
like, wait a second, no, you're wrong, and so it gets a little
I know.
dicey. So, yeah, I've had a lot of fun conversations via social media with people who are like, you're wrong. And I'm like, I'm just, whatever.
I know.
Just,
It's like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, you're like, whatever.
It's like what you said with the Elvis.
Mm-hmm.
I reviewed the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, being immersed in Memphis, I see my friend came on. She's the assistant director of the University of Memphis Art Museum,
Wow.
and
Mm-hmm.
you know, we were in grad school together. I also have a graduate certificate in museum studies, so this is where I learned how to conserve things, archive
Mm-hmm.
work. How do we preserve things for the next generation? I learned all of that and what it takes to do that in different kinds of methods for different types of, you know, textiles and, you know, fabrics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the Elvis movie will push a bunch of things together and make it into one moment, because like you said,
Mm-hmm.
it's Hollywood. It needs to take you on
Yeah.
this journey. It needs to take you on this arc,
Mm-hmm.
and it needs to do it relatively fast,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I did that movie, I reviewed that movie, and I would say, well, that didn't happen to this concert, happened this concert, didn't happen here, but they're going
Yeah.
to push all this together, and that song did
Mm-hmm.
not come out for like another 7 years, but it fits well in this part of the story.
Yeah.
People
Mm-hmm.
get very mad about that. There's Elvis historians who are like, that's not true. I wouldn't even say historians, Elvis fans,
Fans. Yeah.
you know.
I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for saying this, but I did not enjoy the new Elvis movie. But I do have to understand it's a Baz Luhrmann movie. It tells the story through his manager, and it's supposed to be
Mhm.
all whimsical and stuff like that. But I was just like, I think I was also in a bad mood when I watched it too. I don't know, but I know so many people are like, I can't believe you hate it. We have a couple questions. Let's
Oh, sure.
see. Um, Big Ben, Maine. Do you think women study history at a lesser rate than men?
So that's a very interesting question. The studies show that there are more women now in military history than men. There are more women learning about military history and presenting military history than men, and I don't even know why. I Maybe it's just something that's very interesting
Mm-hmm.
and different, and they want to again understand tactics and motivations and strategy. And I'm not talking just recent military history. There's women who do Ottoman Empire and, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like Egyptian, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of women. They're overtaking the men in that area.
Mm-hmm.
In grad school, for me, in my school, I'd say it was about 50-50 male and female for
Mm-hmm.
my classes and
Uh-huh.
for my professors. I wouldn't say it's more women than men. And when it comes to women's history, there were more men, like, because you can take some women's specific classes, and there were a
Mm-hmm.
lot more men, again, 50-50 in those classes. Because I think, you know,
Really?
you want to be able to, if you want to be a historian, you want to be able to speak of all the different
Yeah.
people. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but I don't, it's interesting more women are going into the military history side of
Mm-hmm.
things, but it's really still, right now, it's 50-50. What is interesting though is there's more women's history coming out, right? There's
Yeah.
more like alternative lifestyle history coming out, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I learned about queer theory while I was in grad school. So more of that history is coming out because it hasn't really been studied, hasn't really been looked at. And I always tell people it's there. You just have to reach back and look for it.
Yeah.
It's coming. It's more of it's coming out now.
Yeah, that which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Mark Montague 97. Did you have any interactions with embedded media in your military career?
So I'm not really sure. Embedded
I'm
media.
not.
Is that
I'm not
like
sure. I'm not sure
like?
what that means either.
So, yeah. I mean, I was interviewed a couple times. So I found we did not. I mean, I would say because you're on a ship and because you're flying to and from the ship every day, you don't get a lot of like journalists who are spending time with you. You're going to get the journalists who are going to be like in Iraq and because they're going to stay on the ground, you know.
Yeah.
So not so much of that. I was interviewed a couple times. I remember this may not be like media related, but I did an air show in Dayton, Ohio when I was a student still, and Dayton, Ohio is the birthplace of aviation because that's where the Wright brothers were from, right? So, and they have this huge air show there because they have a big base there. Wright-Patterson, I think, is there, and I was doing this air show again. I'm just a student, and I noticed all these fathers were bringing their daughters over, right? And I don't know anything about this helicopter. I'm making stuff up. I'm the worst. When I don't know something, again, before I become a historian, I would be like, "That's the missile." It wasn't, you know. It wasn't. And I realized I took my lunch, I walked around. I was one of the only, I think there was one other female pilot in the whole air show. And so when it came to like media and talking about stuff, like my call sign was Yoko because I broke up the band, right? And so talking about things like that. But I'll be honest with you, Sarah, I have the best experience. I had the best experience.
That's awesome.
The guys were great. I never had any issues. So
I think that's great. Let's see. Freddie Joe wants to know, what is your favorite and worst history movie and or TV show? And my hair looks great. Thank you, Freddie Joe.
I think your hair looks great too. The best and worst history TV show. I'm gonna be
movie or history, or TV show. What is your favorite movie or TV show, and then what is one that you just can't
I can't watch.
Stand. Yeah.
I don't know. My favorite, I know this is terrible to say, but my favorite is by Antiques Roadshow.
I love that.
I'm an Antiques Roadshow junkie, and then Scott will leave the room when I put it on. He's like, "Are you like 70 years old?" I'm like, "I can't help it. I like love it.
So interesting.
So interesting." And I love that like people buy things or they hold on to things because they love them, because it means something to them, and then it's like it has a story, and then you learn about it, and I love how they tell you about like the artist's story or someone's story or the artifact story, and I love Antiques Roadshow. It's probably my favorite.
I love that.
And I actually like want to meet the people who do the who are giving them the feedback, right? Like they're my people that I want to meet. I love it. I'm like, I want to meet them. They're like, they know so much. The worst history show, I don't know. Sometimes the old Quantum Leap was pretty bad.
Oh my gosh.
What? Yeah. So some stuff like that, the older shows that are history, those were funny. And I watch them now. Like I like watching old TV shows, but if you watch like Bonanza and stuff, trying to talk about history, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
Like I even told you, like one of my favorite movies ever is The Searchers, right? And The Searchers gets a lot of flack because it depicts Native Americans or American Indians, but it's not American Indians who are playing those people, right?
Yeah.
It's white people in red makeup. And so then you get these very stereotypical ways that American Indians acted. And so then you're like, oh my gosh, really? Do they have to?
You're like that? You're like, oh, this is really cringy right now.
Yeah, it's really cringy. It's really not accurate.
Yeah, not accurate at all. But sadly, weirdly, back then that they didn't have those, tape. Adriana wants to know, how has your military career influenced your perspective on your historical research?
I think, and I talked about, because I talked to Scott about this, I feel very capable.
Mm-hmm.
I never feel held back. I never feel like my questions aren't valid. I never feel like I can't do it. I never feel like I can't figure it out. I don't know if that comes from my military background,
Mm-hmm.
because I could do it then, right? I did
Yeah.
everything. I know, Freddie, your boyfriend is like military. Probably some guys, some
Mm-hmm.
of my military guys don't like to hear this. I did everything the guys did. Everything they did, I did. Everything. So I can lift a guy on my shoulders. Yes, I can. I can carry a 200-pound man on my shoulders. I can, I can do all the push-ups. I can do the pull-ups. I can do the sit-ups. I can swim
Badass.
I can carry someone and swim with them. I can carry
Mm-hmm.
a rifle. So it's like, so he's making,
I
so,
know.
so I think that's one of the things that, I had good rapport with the guys,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't like, oh, can you carry this? It's too heavy. I'm like, I can carry it. I can do
You
everything.
got this.
Everything you do, I can do. Like,
Yeah.
I got it. Like, and so, I think I feel very capable then in my history research,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, like, even
Yeah.
asking the questions, even going somewhere, even walking up to someone, I don't ever feel like, should I not be here? Do I not belong here? Should I be asking
Yeah.
this? I never second guess myself, which I don't know is a good thing or a bad thing sometimes. But I feel very confident. And I think maybe
Mm-hmm.
that comes from my military career. And, Freddie can probably attest to this too. I can't be wishy-washy, right? As an
Yeah.
officer, I can't be like, oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you have to.
I'm leading people.
Yeah.
I have to
Mm-hmm.
be confident in my decisions. I have to be confident in what I'm doing. I have to be well-versed and researched, and I have to instill confidence in them. I got to instill confidence in myself. And so I think that is what comes across in my historic research, because I'll just
Mm-hmm.
take it on. No one's done it, I'll do it. No one's figured it
Yeah.
out, I'll figure it out. So
Oh, I absolutely love that. Have you been to the Mississippi burning locations?
so that's in Meridian, Mississippi. I have been there, and there's actually
Mm-hmm.
a base there. That was probably, people asked me when I was doing my lynching research, when's the first time I heard the word lynching? Like, when did I first learn about it? And it was probably Mississippi Burning, that movie, because I
Mm-hmm.
watched that young when it first came out with my parents, who are both cops, right? And I would ask them, like, what is that? And that's when you learn about lynching. So Mississippi Burning, if you don't know that story, that's when the three men were in Meridian, Mississippi, trying to register people to vote. They were
Mm-hmm.
registering African Americans to vote, and the Ku Klux Klan killed them. They found them. They were I think driving in a car late one night. They ran them off the road. They killed them all, and they hid their bodies and they hid the car. And then they bring in the FBI to figure it out. And the FBI calls the case Mississippi Burning. That's where that
Mm-hmm.
comes from. And they start to find evidence, find the car, find the people. And it's very, again, hush hush. People are protecting each other.
Mm-hmm.
Local law enforcement's involved. So it's very covered up. So it's a lot about getting into the FBI coming in and trying to learn what is all happening here. But those locations are in Meridian, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bridge, the very famous bridge where a lot of African Americans were hung off of. They call it Hanging Bridge, and that's close by to Meridian, Mississippi as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's a lot of history that I don't, know
that was
about. So
like me, Sarah.
yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm very thankful and very happy that you share all that, because
Mm-hmm.
it is a lot of history that people don't know about
Mm-hmm.
and don't really share about
Mm-hmm.
either. So
Yeah,
because it is a very
it's
uncomfortable and
uncomfortable.
sad. It's
Mm-hmm.
extremely uncomfortable and it's very sad, and it's and so we definitely need to hear these stories and hear more about them. So I appreciate everything you do. So
Thank you. I know it is uncomfortable, and
yeah,
it's awkward to talk about sometimes, but I feel like as a historian, and you probably know this, you understand this too, Sarah, we honor them by talking about them. Right?
exactly.
We honor them by not being, you know, embarrassed to say something, and they're worth me being uncomfortable. Their lives are worth me, you know, dealing with someone not liking what I have to say or feeling that it's not appropriate for me to say that. It's worth it to me. Their lives are worth it to me, and I'm going to do it. And it's uncomfortable. I lean into the discomfort. Because that's where real conversations happens, where real change happens. It's where real people start to see connections they didn't see before. So
you don't talk about it, you're never, it's not going to progress, and it's not going to, it's just going to stay where it's at. So that's a good thing. So what is next with sorry, excuse me, what is next with Walk with History? Like, what are we going to be looking forward to?
So you have 2 more videos still coming from London. So we have the Tower of London still, and we have Jack the Ripper. And then Band of Brothers. I saved it for last for, like, you know, close to Veterans Day. So I go to Aldebaran. So I go to where they were for like months before D-Day, right? And it's a cute little like English town. It was great. And so I go, and what I really did there was I try to honor Dick Winters and the Barnes family. So I find the grave where the Barnes family were tending their son's grave when they first meet Dick Winters. So I found his grave. The Barnes have since passed away. So I found his grave, and I left a flag at their grave. And then I went to where Dick Winters had stayed in the house and everything. So I go there, and I kind of just walk the town and show you the whole town. And so that'll be a cool one. But another one that we're planning to do, and I'm so excited, in 2 weeks, it's going to be so great. And this is another one for Veterans Day, but I'm so excited for it. I'm doing the Tuskegee Airmen at Arlington.
Ooh, yay. Oh, that's going to be a good one. Ooh, I'm excited.
I know.
So many good things coming. This is exciting. So
I'm excited.
Definitely looking forward to it. Oh, well, Jen, this hour went by super fast.
I know. I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. No. This is what it is. Conversation, just talking, getting to know you. So Jen, I appreciate you coming on so much. This has been such a great time. Super love Walk with History and everything that you guys do. You guys, if you guys are not following Jen at Walk with History, she's on Instagram, and all her YouTube channel is the big one. Are you on any other social platforms, or just Instagram and YouTube? Just
Instagram and YouTube, but we just started a newsletter at #historic.com. So you can, if you go to hashtag and spell out #historic.com, you can sign up for the newsletter, and it comes once every so often. I wouldn't say once a month, but it might be once a month. But we discuss historic things, like we discussed Lizzo playing the flute, right? We discussed, you know, and I honestly, like, I get into it to the fact that I think it's great for the symbolism and for everything she's doing with the arc of racism and enslavement, and Madison being an enslaver. But her touching the flute and putting her mouth on the flute as a conservator, what does that do to the artifacts? And that's the conversation I bring up. And who gets to do that? Who gets to touch things? Who gets to handle things? And so just to have those discussions, right? Because I think historians should have those discussions. And so we put out a couple cool articles and bring out some discussions if you're interested in that. That's what the newsletter is about. But yeah, it's really just YouTube and Instagram.
All right. Walk with History on YouTube and Instagram, and then #historical.com. Is that what you said?
Historic, with just the C.
Historic. #historic. Hashtag spelled out. At one point, it used to be called a pound sign. It used to be called a hashtag sign. When people were like, "What's a pound sign?" I'm like,
I know, like, I think we have it here. #historic.
Oh, perfect! Yay!
Oh, my Yeti.
So, well, Jen, you have a fantastic Friday. The week it was Friday evening, and thank you so much for joining us and coming on and chatting with us. So,
Sarah, it was so great. I enjoy everything you do. So keep doing it, Sarah. Like, I love the little the people who win the medal, who awarded the Medal of Honor, and I like the rabbit holes, and I appreciate all that stuff. So thank you for what you do, Sarah, and for these conversations. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody, have a great night, and Jen, you have a great night too as well.
You too. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.